I finished my garage and it looks really good in here. Now, I did all this work myself and it was amateur hour, so don't look too closely, but overall, super successful. The next thing I want to take care of is hiding the furnace and water heater. I like having them, but I don't like seeing them. So obviously I don't want to put a permanent wall around these. So instead I'm going to hang panels from the ceiling and make kind of a false wall. The panels should be really easy to remove and put on without any tools. And I think it's going to look really good and be a pretty simple little project. The first step will be to transfer the profile of this build out that these sit on up to the ceiling so that I know where to put my brackets. I'm going to use a plumb bob and a pencil to do that because I don't have a laser, unfortunately. So let's get started with that and dig in.
So the idea here is to hang the plumb bob so that it's over the corner of this build out. Now, if there's a secret to using these plumb bobs and getting them to hold still, I don't know it. So let me know if there's a secret, because I'm just trying to balance it with my foot. Eventually I got it to work well enough. I marked where the plumb bob was hanging when it was over the corners, and then I used those marks to mark lines.
So I've got to build this wall out about 5 inches to get around this expansion tank, and I've got to build this wall out about 1.5 inches to get around that condensation drain that runs down right here. So I'm going to cut up some material and get that going.
So I'm using 2x6s for the 5-inch deep build out, just to make it a little bit stronger, to give it a little bit bigger footprint where it screws onto the wall. 5 inches is a fair amount of stick out, and I just wanted to be a little bit stronger. For the 1.5 inch build out, I'm just using a 2x4. So this little platform that I'm screwing these boards onto is framed with 2x4s, and then it's sheathed with OSB and then covered in sheetrock. Some of these screws that I'm putting in are just going into the OSB because I didn't know where the 2x4s were. That's why I step on it there. I just want to make sure it's strong enough with just being screwed into OSB, and it was plenty strong, so that's good. Now I'm just transferring the new outer dimensions of that platform with the added material up to the ceiling.
Now I'm going to cut up these 2x4s to create the frame on the ceiling that the panels will hang from.
So this is actually the second time that I put these up, because the first time, again, my SD card was full, and I thought, well, I'd kind of like to show this build, so I better refilm this. So this is actually the second time I'm doing it, and it actually went really well the second time and the first time, but even better the second time, so that's real good.
So I'm going to use French cleats to attach these panels at the top, and that's why I filled in this. I put in that extra block there so that my French cleat can be about 1 inch thick, because if I try to attach a French cleat to just that top 2x4, it's going to be really tough because the French cleat's going to have to be pretty narrow. So I kind of built that down a little bit, and then the front support is already down because it's fastened to the 2x4s underneath it. So that's what the frame is going to be for these panels to hang from. It's pretty strong. I put a lot of weight on it. I'm a little bit afraid to put all my weight on it, but that's because I have a lot of weight to put on it. So it's strong enough, trust me.
So now I'm cutting up the material for the panels. I'm using 1/4 inch plywood here. I would have preferred to use 1/4 inch MDF. It would have hung flatter. It would have taken the paint better, and I think it would have been more stable over time, but I couldn't find any to buy. But this 1/4 inch plywood is also really light, which is nice, and it worked just fine in the end. So that's what I'm doing here.
I'm just going to do a 2-inch border all the way around each of these panels. So I'll cut some 2-inch strips out of this material, and then I'm going to glue that on.
So glue up was definitely the longest part of this project, just because I had to use all my clamps for each piece of trim that I glued on. It wasn't horrible. The glue sets up in about 15 or 20 minutes. So it didn't take too long, but it did take a little while. I'm working on the ground here because my table saw and outfeed table are being used for the glue up. I'm just cutting some identical shorter pieces of trim here, so I'm just going to measure and mark one of them and then stack them. That way I can cut them all wrong at once to save some time. Isn't that a great life hack? Very cool. I did get it figured out by the end, and it went together great, guys. Went together great. So now it's just back to gluing this stuff up. The fun thing about working with wood glue and spreading out with your fingers is that then you get to pick it off, you know, like peel it off like dry skin. And my wife thinks I'm weird for that, but everybody did that in grade school, right? I mean, that's like the best part of grade school is letting Elmer's glue dry on your hand and then peel it off. Regardless, I showed my 3-year-old daughter how to do it, and she loves it. So if I was alone, I'm not alone anymore.
So I've cut this piece of trim short so that when I put this final piece onto this board, it will overlap here. And then on the other front panel, I just won't put this piece. And then when they're both installed, this panel will overlap the panel next to it and hopefully should hide any gap there.
I've got my blade tilted at an angle here, and I'm just cutting some material for the French cleats.
Now I'm going to attach 2 of these cleats onto each of these panels at the top of the back side. I'll also attach corresponding cleats to the frame that I installed earlier. I'll attach the cleats to the panel with glue so that they're permanent, but I'll attach the cleats to the frame with screws so that they can be adjustable, because I think I'm going to need that.
I did my best to measure where these brackets should go, but ultimately they took a little bit of adjusting, so I was glad I was able to screw and unscrew them. I was able to get them pretty tight. You'll see later in the video that there are some gaps at the top of the panels at the ceiling, but that has more to do with the bow in the ceiling. A real goon did this sheetrock work, so there was a lot of stuff to contend with like that. You can kind of see that panel there on the right, that there's some gap between the 2x6s at the bottom and the panel. That'll go away when I put some clips down there.
So now I'm going to put a piece of trim down these corners to hide this gap.
A guy could joint this board if he wanted to be really straight to help straighten the panel, but it's just going to bow again, so whatever. I decided not to joint it. You can if you want to do it yourself, but I'm not going to do it.
So the last step before painting will be to install some plastic clips that I 3D printed around the bottom of this and at the bottom of the panels so that they're held down at the bottom. Before I do that, I need to hang them so that I can take some measurements. So let's get them hung. Okay, so the idea of these plastic clips will be to fasten these panels at the bottom so they can't swing out if there's a breeze or if I bump them, and it'll just kind of lock them on there. In order to get them installed, I'm going to take some measurements so I know where to put those. While I do that, I'm going to show you how one of these plastic clips goes together. So after that, we'll get started on mounting them. Meet you back here.
My idea with this clip was to make a sliding spring-loaded French cleat that will go at the bottom of the panel and keep everything fixed. I'm putting this pin in to keep the 2 pieces together once it's assembled so that the springs just don't make it fly apart. Once I have it assembled, I'll push that pin in all the way and it will fit down into that slot that you just saw me cover and keep it all together. I wanted a way to fasten these panels without any visible hardware, and this is the idea I came up with. I'm sure there's lots of ways that it could be done and probably is done, but this is the way I came up with doing it, and it ended up working really well. Those springs provide 8 pounds of force each at full compression, and I'm hoping that that also helps to straighten the panel and keep it flat.
I got the measurements, so let's get these installed.
I'm just going to attach some French cleats to engage with those clips that we just talked about. I'm going to use CA glue because it's super fast and my garage is warm enough for it to work. Have you guys noticed that super glue doesn't work in the cold? Why has nobody ever told me this? Why do I have to learn this on my own?
So off camera, I'll attach 2 of these to the rest of the panels. It's just going to be the same thing over and over again. Then we'll attach the 3D printed portion to the frame at the bottom. Cool.
Hopefully it's becoming clear how these sliding French cleats are going to work now that you're kind of seeing where they go. I'm not getting too particular about where I put these because I can just move them and tune it in to make it fit how I want it to fit. Now that is a great camera angle. What an...
All right, let's get them installed. I did adjust the location of these clips, so this should all fit really good. Let's do it. So my goal here is to just hook it on the bottom clips and pull up against those springs and hook it on the top. Well, I really like how this has turned out. I think it looks good. There's a few little gaps I need to fill before I paint, but other than that, I think it's just really nice. The clips really helped to pull everything tight and get rid of some of the big gaps, so I'm really happy with how those have worked out. It's on there really securely. It's not going anywhere. Love it. So, like I say, I'll just get it painted and be done. In fact, why don't I just... What the heck? Oh, you know what? I can't be standing in front of it for that trick to work. Not sure why that is. Thanks for watching.